That's better.
Hello and welcome back to 10,000 Startups. This is Roger Royce. I'm a partner with Haynes Boone in Palo Alto. I do emerging growth and venture capital, and I'm also the host of this podcast where each week we bring you original content on issues of interest to startup companies. And this week we're going to focus on issues of great interest, I think, to oncology technology companies. We have with us today Mona Jhaveri. She's the founder and director of Music Beats Cancer, pioneering solutions to the bioscience funding crisis. And Mona, I want to thank you for being here with us. I know that you're a leader at this intersection of biomedical innovation and sustainable funding models. And every startup company is concerned about funding. And it's especially important, I think, when it comes to cancer technology. So maybe we could start if you could tell us a little bit about who you are and your background, and especially it's an interesting name, Music Beats Cancer. I'm curious to hear where that came from and what that means.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roger. I'm really grateful for this opportunity because I think our model needs to be out there, both in the biomedical ecosystem, but also in for the public at large. So just my background is I am a cancer researcher by training. I did train at the National Cancer Institute for my postdoctoral fellowship, and when I was in the lab, we had a discovery, like many of us have in the lab, and it was one of those discoveries that was patentable. And I asked the NCI, "Would you patent it?" And so we can move it forward. But to make a long story short, in the end, they did not patent it because they had their reasons and the lab was sort of winding down. But they did give me my inventorship rights back to, because I asked them for them back. And in doing so, I got to file my own patent for my own innovation and assign it to my own company that I spun off. And then that took me on a journey to go and raise funds and commercialize the scientific discovery that was born in our lab, but really born out of the people's money, right? Because what is what is the NIH but our collectively our tax dollar funded research. And in that journey, I realized just how hard it was to raise those early dollars. And one of the biggest, and I knew that it wasn't just me and my company. They were hundreds, if not thousands, of startups that needed to prove principle before they could attract institutional venture dollars. And yet, there are so few sources to find that funding. And the kind of funding I felt at the time that was so badly needed was non-dilutive. And yes, we have SBIRs, and yes, there are certain foundations that gift to certain, startups in a certain box. And yes, there's some DoD funds and local grants and whatnot, but really there was no sustainable funding that was non-dilutive that people could tap, that innovators could tap simply to keep the ideas moving. Like I said, that the public funded to begin with. And that got me on this path of starting a nonprofit, a 501(c)(3). And when we filed with the IRS, we made the case that this valley of death that we all know about, that we affectionately call our funding, our funding, sort of our funding bottleneck, um, is not just a detriment to these companies and to the industry. It's a detriment to our public, right? Because if great ideas don't move forward, everybody loses. And the IRS enabled us to or sort of granted us this 501(c)(3) status with the mission of addressing the valley of death. And so hence this organization really just focused on startups that are working on cancer fighting technologies. And then we were talking about the name Music Beats Cancer and how all that began. Well, when I launched Music Beats Cancer, it was 2014. It was actually conceived in 2012, but then even to get the IRS status, that took a year and a half. And so by the time we launched, it was 2014. And at that time, there were a lot of crowd models. And so I wanted to build Music Beats Cancer as a crowd model, as a model that where funding could be democratized, right? Where anybody could donate to a worthy cancer fighting solution, or something, or a solution that they felt was compelling. So I realized there was one big problem. We had and maybe still have a public that just simply doesn't even, at least at the time, they didn't even know the word biotech. They didn't understand, in fact, that science needed to be commercialized. So my whole mission was, how do we get science and innovation to be a common language in our public? So when the public wants to fight the war on cancer, it's not which research laboratory, it's we're going to fund an idea that an innovator is working on. Like I wanted innovation to be normalized as the way we fight the war on cancer. And so music, even though I'm not a musician, and I know everyone asks me, are you? No, I'm not a musician. But it just, the idea of music and why I incorporated it is because I guess I inherently understood that music, is something that's universal. It's, in all genres, all cultures, all languages, all ages. I could see spreading this mission far with the power of music and musicians as being that vehicle for us. So that's how it all began.
Okay, so just to kind of drill down on a little bit, then Music Beats Cancer, then it's would you call it then a platform for helping companies get funded? Would that be a good way to describe it?
Yes, it's a platform for helping companies, startups in particular, get funded, and at the same time, enabling donors to gift their dollar to a cancer fighting idea that they find compelling.
Okay, yeah. So when you say gift, now is this a tax deductible sort of gift, or is this?
Yes,
It
yes,
is. Well,
it
that's
is.
interesting. So they
Yes.
get a deduction, and what do they get in return other than a deduction? Are they buying equity? Is it like a crowdfunding site?
No,
Or
it is
okay,
not an equity crowdfunding site. It is a charitable donation site, but to gift to a cancer fighting idea.
to a cause, I guess, to the
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
And so you're a 501(c)(3), I think you said, Music Beats Cancer. So
yeah.
they would make a contribution to you,
Yes,
but then they would tell you, we would like this to be applied to this particular
yes,
idea. And do they pick out the exact company that it goes to, or
yes,
just more? They do.
yes.
Really?
So, our platform is not much different than a GoFundMe.
Hmm.
So if you ever go on GoFundMe or if you go on Kickstarter and you go, oh, that's a new widget. That's a great new coffee maker. Or you know what? I'm going to back that. I'm going to put $10 there and $50 into that gaming device or whatever. Our platform is a similar concept, except we're a cancer fighting idea platform. And so it becomes our job to create landing pages for every single company that works with us, but to create the landing page in a way that a donor can understand it, and find it inspiring, and that we do have a donate button on each of these landing pages. So when you donate through these landing pages, you're basically restricting your gift to that company. So
Mm.
that's how, the platform, at least public facing, looks like. But that being said, we also reach out to foundations, we reach out to just larger donors, some that don't use the online platform, but that would make donations to us, but restricted for a particular company of choice.
It's interesting because your background is as a startup entrepreneur as well as a scientist.
Yeah,
And I know you founded a company that was venture funded, and has won awards,
yeah,
etc. So I'm curious as to why you've decided to focus on helping companies go through the donor approach rather than the more, I guess, what I'm more used to seeing, which is just, angel, venture, private equity, et cetera. Is there an unmet need? Do you think that this is filling?
Yeah, I think that was exactly it. And what was interesting is when I started my company back, I think it was like 2005-ish. Yeah, we did raise money and we were, we were getting grants and I did all the channels that normally we do, right? And I got some friends and family and so forth. But I think it was 2008, 2009 when the recession hit. And at that point, things just sort of came to a standstill.
Hmm.
And here we are, 2025, and a similar feeling is happening with companies that I'm working with, where they
Hmm.
just are raising even small dollars is hard in this current environment. And in fact, our model is becoming more and more relevant in hard environments,
Hmm.
in hard fundraising environments, equity fundraising environments. And then at the same time, what's happened over the past 10, 15 years is we've had more millionaires and more billionaires. And as a consequence, there are more foundations, there's more donor advised funds, there's more philanthropy happening. And some of it is growing at exponential amounts. So we talked about donor advised funds. There have always been donor advised funds, but now there's just so many of them with so many dollars in them, to the tune of a couple of 100 billion. I think maybe it's 230 billion or so collectively, mostly in Fidelity and Fidelity Vanguard, I think. So these are I guess what I'm trying to say is philanthropy is not there's not a shortage of it. I'd say there's tons of it.
And with what's going on with federal funding these days, um, we've heard about NIH cuts. We've
Yep.
heard about federal grants being canceled and um, some of the indirect funding no longer being made. I suppose that this has become just that much more important, especially for companies in the cancer space, right?
100%. I think what they say to me is like the only money left is philanthropy. So we are one of the very few organizations, at least that I'm aware of, that is basically the engine of supporting startups, by connecting them to philanthropy.
And I guess we could go one step further, given your background as a scientist. I expect that you probably have an idea as to what some of the very worthy causes are. Because I said, well, let me just ask. I mean, what are the criteria? I mean, what is a company that's worthy of funding under this sort of platform? What do they have to have in order to come to you and get the landing page?
So they first of all have to be a company, a startup, right? So we won't fund university research because that's not under our mission. Secondly, we tend to look at early stage, meaning they are. I don't want to say they're not in the clinic because we have some that are or close to clinic, but early stage in that they are either preclinical or early stage clinical. But inevitably, there's no shortage of companies like that. It seems like there's, I don't know, it seems like thousands of companies that are in that spot. But we do look at the science. We do look at the team. We want to know the commercial strategy. But what we don't do is we don't vet to the level of a VC because we're not looking for return on that dollar in terms of return on investment. We're looking for, is the company working on something where standard of care, where that's missing in standard of care. We really, that is something we focus on deeply, right? Is the company working on an important idea that will advance standard of care for a particular cancer? And if you can't make the case for that, I don't think you can be on this platform, right? Because um, I think our 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 constituents are donors. And if they don't see that there's value in what you're working on, then they're not going to donate. So that's like one of and that's one of the questions we ask. What problem are you solving in fighting cancer?
Mm. Now, you've been around for quite a while, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So I've got to ask, how has the platform worked? Have you been able to fund quite a few companies? Is it found a receptive audience in the donor community? Are startups taking advantage of this?
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question because when we launched, it's like we fell flat for years, and the we it was very difficult to. We talked about the donor community. We would go out to donors, and just sort of regular people, and first of all, people did not know the word biotech. They did not realize science had to be commercialized in order to get to patients. Um, and I realized the deep sort of disconnect between people working on cancer fighting solutions and people who want to see and fund cancer fighting solutions, right? There was a deep divide. And that went on for years. And so too, I tried to get companies on our platform and I had to pull teeth to get groups on our platform. And even when they got on the platform, they didn't want to support the process. They basically were like, okay, Mona, fine, we'll be on it, but you do the work. We're going to be over here, And so this went on for years. It was super frustrating. Um, but I could see the vision, but it
Mhm.
was one of those things like I don't think others could see it. And then fast forward, COVID happened. And then we had a different public. And suddenly the public could say the word mRNA and they knew what PCR tests were. And they understood that there were startups like Moderna, BioNTech that had ideas and that when there's a need, these ideas could then, come to the rescue. The connections started happening within the public space. But so too, I think the industry became more open to embracing I guess the public donors and being more public. And so that helped, that gave us a big boost. And then finally, here we are, the Trump administration cuts to grants, difficult environment, and now we're getting companies applying to our platform each week.
I'll bet.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was really funny at the beginning where it was like I had to pull people's teeth. Now companies are applying, every week we're launching a new one, and I'm seeing that it's not going to be long until we have hundreds of companies on this platform. And as companies are applying, we're reaching out to foundations and to philanthropists, and also the companies are bringing their networks. And their networks inevitably are investors, their board members,
Yeah.
their spouses, their neighbors, their
Yeah.
people, and those people are high net worth with philanthropic capital. And so the efforts to fund is now collaborative, right? Whereas before nobody wanted to touch this.
Right.
Now this is a new path. Let's try it on.
So I got to ask, are there any sort of strings attached to this money? I mean, do you get reports? Do you get performance? Do you take board seats, become an observer, all the usual stuff that VCs do? Do you do any of that?
Yeah, so the way it works on our platform is we take 10% of what gets raised. So that comes back to us to support. We don't charge an upfront fee, at least not yet. So we take the risk at the end. And then on top of it, when money does get raised, the money is then gifted to the company under what's called a gift agreement. And in this gift agreement, we outline the scope of work and we agree on that scope of work. And the gift agreement basically says we're gifting, even no matter how this money was found, the fact that it comes through Music Beats Cancer and it gets gifted to the company as a grant. The agreement says you must use the money for the work we agreed upon. And if you don't, we have the right to ask for it back. So this is the sort of, so for example, if a company get that we send the money to then gets bought out and they didn't use it for what we agreed upon, then we can ask for it back.
I see.
But needless to say, this is it's a classic gift agreement.
Yep,
With
gotcha. Yeah, and given that you're a 501(c)(3), I
right,
mean, you've got policies and procedures in place, so
yeah,
you basically are legally obligated to make sure that
yes.
funds get spent in accordance with your charitable purpose.
Right.
So I'm just thinking, if I'm a donor, I'm thinking, how do I know that this money's going to do what I want it to do? Because we've all heard these terrible stories about people making gifts, and it just gives an administrative fee after fee that doesn't get where we want it to. But under your platform is, I assume, there's a little more transparency than that.
Well, that's just it. So you're gifting to the company that whose company whose ideas you like, but as
Yeah.
part like most crowd models, Music Beats Cancer is not different. The company has a responsibility to send these donors, and we usually give them the emails.
Oh,
Here are all the people that donated. Give them a report. Every quarter, every other quarter on what worked, what didn't work, and what are your next steps in
I see.
a short paragraph in a layperson's terms that so they can understand that their money is moving the needle. And that's part of our process that we ask the companies when they join.
Okay, I got you. Well, that's great. So what does the future look like? I guess you're getting an application every week these days, and I can see the companies want the money. Are the donors stepping up? Are they funding? Is in this environment, are they kind of filling the slack?
So this is a great question, and it's something that now that we're in this position, right, where companies are coming on board, companies are being more collaborative and bringing their networks. We're knocking on doors across foundations and people that we think are good fits. Um, then the next question is, how easy or not easy is this going to be, right? And what we're finding, it's really interesting because it's like we're finding the world of roadblocks, challenges, and then also where we're inspiring people. Like I think a lot of people that we talk to, especially in foundations, they're donating to university research, having no idea that that research will never help a patient ever. Simply because, not that the science wasn't good, but simply because it had no commercial path,
Mhm.
right? You're getting great results, and maybe you're even doing some clinical stuff, but there's no patents, there's no team, there's no commercial plan. And if I were to be diagnosed with a cancer tomorrow, that would not, that clinician would have no access to that science, right? So we're even educating these foundations that had no idea, and some of them that gift millions to research. So this has been a great, interesting, oftentimes frustrating kind of conversation because after that conversation is, hey, are you guys willing to change? Are you guys willing to, through our public-private partnership, you can fund innovations that will get to patients sooner. You can change the landscape of how we fight brain cancer or breast cancer or whatever it might be. Do you want to be part of it? And then we often see other kinds of resistance, like they don't want to collaborate or they don't want to go through a third party or they don't want to pay overhead or whatever it might be. But it was always really fascinating to me how many excuses get in the way of not funding the cures and the treatments and the solutions that patients need. And
Yeah.
that just this journey has really opened my eyes.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that there are organizations like yours out there that are stepping up and helping these companies get to market. I really think that the cures for cancer and the new treatments are going to come from the startup community, and they're
Yeah.
going to come from the affinity investors and people who are really interested in just seeing these products get to market. Well, with that, I want to be respectful of your time. This is Roger Royce with
Thank you.
10,000 Startups. We've been talking to Dr. Mona Jhaveri. She is the founder and executive director of Music Beats Cancer, which is a platform for helping oncology technology companies raise money, basically charitable contributions to help them
Yep.
go ahead and implement their mission Thank you again for being here, Dr. Jhaveri. And thank you, audience. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you, Roger.